Hello and welcome to my ranking of the Doctor Who new series Christmas specials. Yes, this is the first day of the Advent calendar, and this is an appropriate video to be doing, considering that, well, announced by Chibnall, I guess we won't be getting a Christmas special this year. So I thought it would be a good time to rank the Christmas special from my least favourite to favourite. Now, of course, this is all subjective. You know, obviously everyone's going to have a different list, so comment yours below if you wish. And yeah, it'll be interesting to have a discussion about it. And also, I'm feeling a bit under the weather today, so this won't be a face-to-face video. I will only be recording on audio, but I will have these lovely pictures up so that you have something to look at least. But without further ado, let's get on with ranking the new series Christmas specials. Now, in last place, in number 13, we have the 2011 Christmas special, The Doctor, the Widow, and the Wardrobe. Yeah, I really don't like this episode. In fact, it's one of my least favourite episodes of the new series. I find it such an aggravating episode to watch. Just the sheer nonsense that goes on in this episode really drives me up the wall. And this isn't necessarily an unpopular opinion either. I know a lot of people don't like the Doctor, the Widow, and the Wardrobe. In fact, we discussed it when we had to defend it against Hellbent in our Worst Of series. So if you want a more in-depth review or sort of thoughts on that episode, then check that out when that comes up. But yeah, The Doctor, the Widow, and the Wardrobe is by far the worst Christmas special of the new series, in my opinion. It's just absolutely appalling, and yeah, I have no regret in putting it in last place. I absolutely hate it. Now at number 12 we have the 2014 Christmas special, Last Christmas. Now this of course was the first Christmas special for Peter Capaldi, the 12th Doctor. And this was a bit of a weird one, I found. It was coming off the back of Death in Heaven, which was quite a dark finale. And we thought we had seen the last of Clara, but obviously we hadn't, and this wasn't even the last of her here. So yeah, that didn't have much going for it, for me anyway. And yeah, we have Nick Frost as Santa Claus, which is, I guess, is fitting considering his name is Nick Frost. But yeah, this one kind of ripped off elements from other sort of sci-fi genre movies that we've seen before, like Inception and Alien. And it was, I guess, I don't know, it was Moffat was trying to do something with the story, but for me it just didn't really work. It was kind of a really depressing Christmas special, but not in a good way. Like, I quite like dark stories, but this wasn't even dark, this was just kind of flat. And yeah, there wasn't really much about Last Christmas that I enjoyed, and I really didn't like the ending, how there was kind of this story that Moffat was going for Clara, how she was growing old and the Doctor was seeing her growing old, but then they sort of reversed it at the last second, because I guess they decided that Clara was coming back for series 9, and it just felt like a bit of a weird ending. Yeah, not a big fan of Last Christmas, unfortunately. Now at number 11 we have Voyage of the Damned. And this might come as a surprise, because I've been very vocal about how much I love the Russell T Davies era and how David Tennant is my favourite Doctor. But Voyage of the Damned is an episode that I find I'm always a bit out of place in fandom about, because I found that Voyage of the Damned is an episode that's kind of, it's either loved or it's hated, and it seems to be mostly enjoyed. I don't know. I suppose, I mean, it's a sort of disaster movie-esque plot, and it kind of feels like the kind of thing that you would see in Hollywood, but it's sort of like a cartoonish version of that. Titanic crashing to Earth, and it brings back the Axons from the Pertwee era, which I guess is kind of cool, and it's obviously got Kylie Minogue in it as well, which is sort of a bit of fun stunt casting. And one thing to be said about Voyage of the Damned is this is kind of representative of when Doctor Who was at its most popular, because I believe it's still has the highest viewership of any episode from the new series. I think it was something ridiculous, like overnight was 13 million in the UK, which is just absolutely unbelievable. But Doctor Who was at its absolute peak of popularity around this time. And yeah, whilst I can see why someone would enjoy Voyage of the Damned, for me it's just, I don't know, it's just kind of there for me. It's probably the Russell T Davies episode that I enjoy the least. And I mean, not from his era, obviously Fear Her is way worse than this, but in terms of the episodes that Davies actually wrote for the show, I just don't get much from Voyage of the Damned. It's a very lackluster episode. Still, it's alright. It's decent to watch. It's not bad. It's just kind of, I never enjoy it, and I never look forward to watching it. It's better than some other mediocre episodes. It's watchable enough. It's a bit of fun, but yeah, there's just not much in it for me. At the number 10 spot, we have the 2015 Christmas special, The Husbands of River Song. Now, this is an interesting one, because at this point we hadn't seen River Song since the end of Matt Smith's era in Name of the Doctor, and that episode kind of sent her off in a way, because we saw the ghost file from the library appear, and we sort of saw the Doctor and River have this romantic end to their arc. So it was a bit strange to see River come back, but one thing I can be thankful for is I think Peter Capaldi and Alex Kingston have really good chemistry on screen, and I actually enjoy the 12th Doctor more with River than the 11th Doctor with River. And it's because in this episode they kind of come across as this sort of old married couple, and I do really like that vibe. I quite enjoy their relationship, and at the end of the story it is a really nice end to River Song's character, and I in a way I sort of hope we don't see her again, except for maybe a very vast exception like an anniversary or whatever, but I kind of feel like The Husbands of River Song is the end of River's character, and it's a nice way to go out. However, on the other side of that, I think the actual B plot of this episode is a bit weak. The sort of robot man and Nardole was there, but he wasn't really a character yet, and there's a lot of weird comedy, and it just sort of drags on a bit. Yeah, I don't know, Husbands of River Song, it's alright, but I don't know, it's Moffat, it's sort of just, it's a weird one, but you know, overall, I do enjoy seeing the sort of send-off of River Song, and seeing her with Capaldi was nice. Now at the number 9 spot, we have the 2016 Christmas special, The Return of Dr. Mysterio. Now this is an interesting one because a lot of people seem to really, really hate this episode, and I can sort of see why. It's not really taking the piss out of superheroes like you would expect Doctor Who to do. It's sort of playing it straight, which is kind of a weird approach for a Doctor Who episode. It's kind of weird that superheroes would be used as sort of as a drive for the episode, like as if it's real. And it's not really a sci-fi thing. It's very fantasy superhero genre. But at the end of the day, look, I don't know. I take Christmas specials with a grain of salt, and I don't hate this episode like other people do. I find it's a sort of fun watch. I'd flick it on on a rainy day if I was bored. You know, it's not the greatest thing ever. It's a bit lazy. Moffat didn't really do anything ambitious with this episode. It's very, very, very tacked on. But you know, it's fun. I enjoy it. Whatever. Return of Dr. Mysterio, it's alright, I guess. Now at number 8, we have the 2008 Christmas special, The Next Doctor. Now this is a peculiar one, because coming off Series 4, there was this anticipation for the 10th Doctor's last hurrah, if you will. And so we sort of got this strange little story about a man who was played by obviously David Morrissey, who claims to be the Doctor. And I like this idea that the guy that David Morrissey is playing, I think his name, Jackson Lake, that's his name. Jackson Lake thinks he's the Doctor, and it's a funny comedic sort of dynamic between David Tennant and David Morrissey. I do really like that, and I think definitely Jackson Lake's story is definitely the highlight of the next Doctor. It's the part I find the most enjoyable. However, what I think lets this episode down a bit is the Cyberman side of it. I felt like that was just kind of, it wasn't handled too well. It felt quite lazy. The last 20 minutes of this episode are just a bit of a blockbuster mashup. It was going back to the whole Voyage of the Damned thing that I didn't really have a big, liking for. However, it's not too bad. It's just kind of there. Again, I take Christmas specials with a grain of salt, and this one is just, it's alright. I enjoy the next Doctor. It's fun. It's a fun episode. Now at number 7, we have the 2010 Christmas special, A Christmas Carol. Now this is interesting, because I know that there are a lot of people out there who say that this is their favourite Christmas special. And I can see why. There is a very nice little fairy tale story in here. And it's a lot of people that like Moffat's writing style. They like how he takes this guy who's sort of playing Scrooge, if you will, played by Michael Gambon. He's brilliant, and they tell a romantic love story across his life, but it's sort of a timey-wimey love story in a way. And whilst I do think that's a cool idea, unfortunately this kind of story it's just not for me. I'm not into the whole cheesy Christmas special vibe. I find it to be it's too Hollywood for me. And whilst I do find enjoyment in the Christmas Carol, I just can't ever say that it's one of my favourite Christmas specials, because that style of storytelling, that really fairy tale, cheesy Christmas, warm, loving feeling is just, for me, that's not what I enjoy about Doctor Who. And take it or leave it, I get if someone loves this episode, but it's just not my cup of tea. So at number 6, we have the 2012 Christmas special, The SNOWMEN. SNOWMEN is an interesting one, because it is sort of it introduces one of the lives of Clara, if you will. The Victorian Clara, which I think is the best Clara. I think her personality in The SNOWMEN is a lot more likeable than the one we eventually get. Having said that, I don't know, it's interesting, this one, because it comes right off this dramatic end to Amy and Rory's tenure in The Angels Take Manhattan, and the Doctor is kind of grieving a bit, and but then in the middle of this, we have this bizarre story where the Great Intelligence comes back and is possessing Snow. Okay. I guess that's it's a bit of a fun story. I don't know. There's a lot of moments in The SNOWMEN that do make me cringe, though. I think there's that scene where the Doctor, he's playing Sherlock Holmes, and it's just a bit weird. I don't know. Some of the scenes in this episode are just, they do aggravate me a little bit. It's a bit of a ridiculous story, I think, but there are really enjoyable moments. I do really like the fact that the story introduces us to a new TARDIS, and I like the Doctor's attitude, apart from some of the sillier scenes, but I do like how 11th Doctor's character, he changes after Amy and Rory leave, and he sort of develops into it's a more serious side of his character, but then, I guess that's sort of interrupted by the more comedic elements, which are a bit jarring. And the ending, I don't know, the fact that it's all, the Great Intelligence is defeated by the power of tears is a bit weird. Yeah, I was considering putting this one lower, but I don't know, there are elements to The SNOWMEN that I do enjoy, and it's quite a fun watch, but yeah, SNOWMEN, it's an episode that I used to really like, but it's sort of slipped a bit over the years as my tastes have changed, but still, it's good enough. Now at number 5, we have the latest Christmas special, Peter Capaldi's regeneration story, Twice Upon a Time. Now this is an interesting one. Twice Upon a Time is a story that was never really supposed to happen until Moffat realized that Chibnall wasn't going to write a Christmas special. So he sort of shoehorned in this story to take place after Series 10. And it has the first Doctor in it, portrayed by David Bradley. And, it's a weird, I think it's quite possibly one of the weirdest regeneration stories. I guess because the Doctor Falls was kind of the real regeneration story, and this is just sort of like the goodbye, if you will. It's sort of like the afternote of the Capaldi era. But I'm real mixed on this one. There are a lot of elements I do like, but it's just sort of, it's an episode where not much really happens. It's quite laid back. I really like Mark Gatiss in this episode, though. I think he's great. And it is nice to see some familiar faces pop up. Like, you got memories of Bill and Nardole, and Rusty's there, I guess. That's kind of cool. And I don't know. It's to end the Moffat era, it is a bit of a weird one. The first Doctor portrayal is not very good, I don't think. It works for comedic value, but making out the first Doctor as a sexist old bastard is kind of inaccurate in a way, but I guess Moffat doesn't really care about the canon, as we know already. But yeah, I don't know. I don't hate this episode as much as some people do, but yeah, it's not the best regeneration story. It's good enough to be ranked above some of the other Christmas specials, but because I do enjoy this episode to a degree. However, I don't know. Twice Upon a Time, it might get worse over time, but for now, it's at this spot, number 5. Okay, now we're getting into the Christmas specials that I actually really like. Number 4 is the 2006 Christmas special, The Runaway Bride. This episode is really, really fun. This is when the 10th Doctor meets Donna Noble for the first time. However, her character isn't exactly what it would turn out to be. She's definitely more for comedic relief this time. Sort of a stunt cast, the same way that Kylie Minogue was in Voyage of the Damned. But yeah, I actually really enjoy this episode. I like Donna's story in this, the fact that she's supposed to be getting married and it all turns to shit because of some alien invasion. It's just sort of, it's this funny, it's a really funny episode. I enjoy it a lot. And also, unlike some of the other episodes that come off big events, such as the SNOWMEN, which comes off Angels Take Manhattan, I think this episode, coming off Doomsday, does a really good job of developing the 10th Doctor's character. Because in Series 2, I loved the 10th Doctor in Series 2, I loved his personality, but we didn't really get a really deep look into his character, and I feel like The Runaway Bride is one of those first episodes that really breaks the 10th Doctor down and really shows you the truth behind his eyes, and I really like that. I mean, I guess you could argue it's a bit of a, romance, but I love that era of the show. And one of my most enjoyable scenes from The Runaway Bride is that car chase scene where the TARDIS is chasing the car and Donna has to jump from the car to the TARDIS. I just think it's just fun. Runaway Bride, it's a fun Christmas special. It's not the greatest thing ever, but it's enjoyable to watch, and I'll always have a soft spot for The Runaway Bride. Now at number 3, we have the very first New Who Christmas special, the 2005 Christmas special, The Christmas Invasion. Now, of course, similar to The Runaway Bride, this also comes off big events. This coming off the Series 1 finale where Christopher Eccleston regenerated into David Tennant. The Christmas Invasion is David Tennant's first episode as the Doctor, so it is dealing with the post-regeneration trauma and whatnot, but also it is this world invasion story with the mighty Sycorax And if you watched our reaction and review to the Christmas Invasion, we all really enjoy that episode. It's for me, the Christmas Invasion is sort of the definition of what a Christmas special should be. It's just a really, really, really fun episode. And the fact that it's coupled with the 10th Doctor's post-regeneration trauma, and then it's got that great scene where he comes out of the TARDIS and he has that face-off with the Sycorax and has that really fun sword fight on the roof of the spaceship in his pajamas. Oh, it's just so enjoyable. I love the Christmas Invasion. It's such a fun episode. I'll always have a lot of nostalgia for that era. And yeah, Christmas Invasion, love it. Now, number 2 is the 2013 Christmas special, Matt Smith's regeneration story, The Time of the Doctor. Now, this is an interesting one. This is quite a polarizing, divisive episode, I've found. It really depends on which perspective of fandom you really come from. A lot of people think that this is a beautiful, wonderful, magical send-off for the 11th Doctor as he grows from being this young, fast-talking, joking, silly Doctor that's running around the TARDIS and doing lots of things, and as 11th Doctor is known for, and then he grows into this old man defending this town on Trenzalore from all these villains, and you see the 11th Doctor's character in a metaphor in Time of the Doctor, and it's this sort of beautiful, poetic end to this character. But then there's sort of the other side of the thing, is the problem as well, is a lot of people really don't like this episode. Number one, because it's sort of all the arcs that were set up in Matt Smith's era are sort of brushed to the side in this episode. Like, I think there was a whole bunch of stuff from Series 5 and Series 6 that was dealt with in one conversation around a dinner table. Yeah, I don't know. That stuff does bother me a bit. And there's a lot of really, really, really silly humor in Time of the Doctor, like the Doctor being naked in front of Clara's family. It's just kind of weird. But, you know what? Overall, it's one of those episodes where it sort of echoes all of the things that I didn't really like about the Smith era. However, because it's the last one, I can kind of forgive it. It's kind of like when you got one of those family members that you find really annoying, like say a brother or sister or cousin, or one of those people in your life. Maybe it's one of your friends, and you know, they really, really, really annoy you, and there's so many things about them that just trigger you. But then, say for example, you know, you're moving countries, or maybe they've gotten really ill and they might, you know, it's really sad and you might not ever see them again, and all that sort of goes out the window, because even though, you know, there was so many things that annoyed you about them, you sort of look at them for what they are, and seeing them in that sort of state where they're about to leave you, you know, for me, Matt Smith's not one of my favourite Doctors, but I find that in his regeneration story, a lot of the stuff I don't like about his Doctor, I kind of look past it, because, you know, as he's being broken down and he's about to die, even though it is very over the top and very overblown, and there's a lot of stuff in Time of the Doctor that it does niggle at me, you know, like the villains not being used well. Overall, the core story of Matt Smith's Doctor regenerating, I do quite like. I think it's a lovely sort of end to his Doctor. It's nice and poetic, and it makes me feel warm inside. I do remember on first viewing, I got very emotional at the last scene in the TARDIS when he says goodbye and takes his bow tie off. So yeah, Time of the Doctor is an interesting one. It's second place on my list of Christmas specials. No, even with the flaws, I just find it to be a very enjoyable watch. Now, at number 1, we have quite possibly the most controversial Christmas special of all time, The End of Time Part 1. Now, this is an interesting one to talk about, because this is only Part 1 of a 2-part story. So it's kind of like a lot of what happens in End of Time Part 1 is set up for Part 2, so it is strange to look at it by itself. However, look, if you look at it from my perspective, I grew up with the Russell T Davies era, and I grew up with the taste of that era. I love how that era portrays Doctor Who. I always enjoy watching the RTD era. It's my Doctor Who, really, and David Tennant is my Doctor. Now, there are a lot of things about the End of Time that a lot of people don't like. Particularly, number one, the impending regeneration. A lot of people don't like how the Doctor portrays regeneration as a negative thing. In End of Time Part 1, there's a scene in the cafe with Wilfred where he's saying things like, we know when I die and I'm replaced by another man, and he runs away with my body. And he says things like, regeneration feels like dying. It's not this passing of the torch, it's me dying and I'm being replaced. And whilst I can completely understand why they would aggravate someone, especially someone who's been watching for a long time, who has this idea of what regeneration is, for me, the 10th Doctor's story arc is sort of independent, and I often view this story as self-contained as opposed to in relation to other Doctors. And I do really relate and identify and enjoy the horrible, harrowing angst that the 10th Doctor has in his last story. And also, another controversial element of End of Time Part 1 is the Master. John Sim playing the crazy Master. He's undead, he's brought back with necromancy, he shoots lightning bolts out his hand, he eats humans, he menacingly eats a chicken. There's a whole bunch of crazy shit that happens at the end of the episode. He clones himself so that everyone on Earth is John Sim. Yeah, it's fucking crazy, it's wild, controversial, divisive, polarizing, whatever you want to call it. I can totally understand why John Sim in the End of Time does not entertain everyone, but for me, it's just so much fun to watch. Yeah, overall, End of Time Part 1, nowhere near a perfect episode, full of flaws. There's a lot of things in it that could have been done differently to make it less dodgy on some of the viewers, but personally, it's the Christmas special that I enjoy watching the most, and for whatever reason, I can't rank it any lower than number 1, because no other episode on Christmas Day has captivated me like End of Time. And I know that's a controversial opinion, and I know a lot of people won't like to hear this, but I like it. I think it's really fun and enjoyable and silly and wild, and it's the crazy kind of shit that I love from the Russell T Davies era. And yeah, it's my favourite Christmas special of New Who. So, post your favourite Christmas specials below, let me know what you think, and yeah, see you on the next video.